What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. The Sinnoh region is a great one, filled with some solid Pokémon, and while there are plenty that are fine living their life as monotyped, there are also some Pokémon that have too many attributes to be confined to just two, and should be triple-typed or even further. Sadly, this does not seem to really follow with as many of their legendary Pokémon, well, except for maybe Palkia could get away with it, but I'll start with number 6, Mamoswine. Like many Pokémon, the Sinnoh region took something that was never really special with Swinub and Piloswine and improved them greatly by making a phenomenal third stage in Mamoswine. Taking a hairy boar and upgrading it to a full-blown mammoth is a great way to make it more appealing. But that wasn't all, because this Ice Age pig is surprisingly useful in battle. And the unique typing of Ice and Ground actually fares a lot better than it looks on paper. So you might wonder what this Pokémon needs as an extra type. Well, if you ask me, the most likely option would be to add the Rock type. See, Pokémon from a long time ago are generally Rock type. You could say that's just because they're fossils, however we also have Relicanth, who has been said to date back to that time as well. So if Mamoswine was around back then too, it would make sense for it to have the matching Rock typing. Now, Rock is actually pretty weak with 5 prominent weaknesses and only resisting fire, normal, poison, and flying, which you're really less likely to see, but when paired with current Mamoswine, it's actually pretty bad. It would give resistances to normal, flying, a quad resist to poison, and immunity to electric, but with a ground weakness we would also see 4 times weaknesses to grass, water, fighting, and steel. We could have guessed this already since we know that rock and ice is a pretty bad combination, but at least that fire weakness cancels out, right? So clearly Mamoswine doesn't need this, but I do think that it would fit with everything we know about this ancient Pokémon. Number 5, Probopass. So there are plenty of new evolutions, and honestly a lot of them could probably get away with having a third type, but I feel like Probopass should be our pick, because unlike the last entry, it does sort of need a little something to make it work. Probopass and its previous stage are both said to have powers of magnetism, and the only other magnet-related Pokémon are all electric types. The main poster child for it is Electric and Steel, and Probopass already has Steel down, so why not give it Electric too? Electric is great, only having 1 weakness and 3 resistances, and Probopass's current typing of Rock and Steel is weak to Water, with quad weaknesses to Fighting and Ground, while resisting Psychic, Ice, Bug, Rock, Dragon, Fairy, quad resists Normal and Flying, and is immune to Poison. That's great. So when you put it together, it's still weak to water, with a quad weakness to fighting, and the ground does actually jump up to ×8. So that can be rough, but it resists dragon, steel, psychic, fairy, electric, bug, rock, ice, quad resists normal, ×8 resists flying, and is immune to poison. Honestly, this could be a lot worse. I know that the ground threat seems bad, but Probopass not only has the capability to use Magnet Rise and remove that from the equation entirely, but if nothing else, it can also have the Sturdy ability, so you can fire back with those stab electric attacks that are in its move pool already. That plus the added resistances makes me think that it's more than worth it, and might even make me dislike this Pokémon a lot less if it were to come about. Number 4, Yanmega. I was hesitant to put Yanmega here because we did just have Flygon in the last video, but then I realized, that's a ground type, this is a flying type, it's totally different. And that might sound flippant, but it's true. Bug and Flying is not really the best type combination with more weaknesses than resistances, so I can respect the fact that they wanted to help out poor Yanma, but some fancy moves and abilities can only pull this Pokémon so far. So looking at Yanmega, I think it's pretty obvious that it deserves the Dragon typing. Dragon wouldn't exactly help it survive Stealth Rocks, but it would bring resistances to all of the starting types with only a few weaknesses, but also add new Stab Dragon attacks that would counter any other dragons that you might be facing. Now, some people might not think the fact that it's a Dragonfly is enough, but that's not it. It becomes covered in green scales and grows intimidating spikes, so it basically chose to become a Godzilla bug. But it does still retain its flying type as well, as it even grew a new pair of wings on its tail, so it should keep all of the 3 types. So when put together, this combination would give weaknesses to Fairy, Dragon, Flying, and quad weaknesses to Ice and Rock, with resistances to Water, Bug, quad resist Fighting, 8 times resist Grass, and be immune to Ground. So sure, there's another major threat to watch out for, but I think the resists and greater offensive power is just what this Dragonfly needs. Number 3. Empoleon. Empoleon is my favorite Pokemon of all time, but I assure you its spot on this list is earned. Water and Steel is already an amazing typing, with only 3 weaknesses but with 10 resistances and an immunity. So it's not like Empoleon is hurting for help, but a simple look tells you that it can do so much more. As we know, it starts out as a cute little Piplup, and as an adorable penguin, I think the most common idea would be to add the ice typing. We already know that the ice qualities are pretty bad, so when you put it together with water and steel, it becomes weak to electric, ground, now fire, and quad weak to fighting. And it resists water, fairy, dragon, normal, flying, psychic, bug, a regular steel resist, and a now 8 times resistant to ice, and of course the poison immunity. Really, this is not bad because you still have a bunch of water attacks to handle that fire weakness, and now stab ice to take out the ground. The fighting type could be bad, but Empoleon also gets a fair amount of flying attacks to help. In fact, I could see a valid argument for making Empoleon a flying type instead of ice. That would change things in the matchups quite a bit by completely removing the ground weakness, instead being an immunity, but it would create a 4 times weakness to electric, so either way, Empoleon is bound to get a crippling weak point no matter what. But really the fact that this Emperor Penguin could be 4 different types means that it's a natural pick to give it at least 1 extra, so really just take your pick on what you would rather have. Maybe even some version exclusive forms of some kind in the future. Number 2. Gliscor. So back in Johto, we talked about Gligar as a poison type, and a frequently mentioned critique is that if that were to happen, Gliscor would lose the poison heal ability. But I never said Gliscor would be a poison type too. I mean, it probably could be, but my pick here would be Dark. This scorpion bat thing is more terrifying than ever, and it has dex entries describing it swooping down to bite the throat of its prey and drain all of their fluids while smiling about it. So this gargoyle Batman figure seems to have a malicious side for sure. Currently, Gliscor has one of the best type pairings around, with ground and flying only having 2 weaknesses, but with 2 immunities and more resistances. So we've already seen the dark type numerous times in this series already, and when we put it together, it would make Gliscor weak to water, fairy, and quad weak to ice, and it resists ghost, poison, and dark, with immunities to electric, ground, and psychic. That's well worth the 1 added flaw to have other things cancel out and have more immunities than some Pokemon even have resistances. Although I could definitely see an argument for the poison type, or even the bug type really, so with Gliscor having 5 possible types, the least we can do is give it 3, or maybe even some sort of regional variant down the line. Number 1. Drapion. So to me, there is no other Pokemon from the Sinnoh region that seems to deserve having 3 types more than Drapion. And you know why. Its first stage, Skorupi, is a poison and bug type. Nothing that we haven't seen before, but when it evolves, it becomes a poison and dark type. Now, I'm not saying that the dark typing doesn't fit, because this thing turns into a vicious monster, but really there's no reason that it should have lost its bug typing at all. It's still just as much of a scorpion, maybe even more with its enhanced appendages. There are maybe some other options like Togekiss where I could see them keeping the normal type, but it doesn't seem like a necessity like with Drapion, which really is equal parts poison, bug, and dark. So as it is, poison and dark is actually a great combination, only weak to the ground type, with resistances to grass, ghost, both poison and dark, and is immune to psychic. By contrast, Bug alone is weak to flying, fire, and rock, and resists grass, fighting, and ground. So when you blend them all together, we see that Drapion would be weak to fire, rock, and flying, and would resist poison, ghost, dark, fighting, quad resists grass, and is immune to psychic. Now, the Ogre Scorp Pokemon might not have as many options as some of the other contenders on this list, but the 3 types that it would have are fully represented in its design and lore. Sure, Skorupi probably isn't evil enough for the Dark type, but given how Drapion seems to be a favorite of villains, it only makes sense to add that while carrying forward all of the other aspects. Once again, I'm not saying that triple types on Pokemon are likely, but if they were implemented as some sort of in-battle gimmick, I can guarantee you that Drapion would be amongst the first to be given such an honor. So, those are the top 6 Sinnoh Pokemon that deserve triple types. They might not all benefit competitively with some of these changes, but it would simply be fun to see how all of the combinations would play out, especially when there are so many other possibilities that could fit. Which Sinnoh Pokemon would you make triple typed? Let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!